The red warning lights flashed across the control room like angry eyes. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood at the center of the war room, watching his officers scramble to their stations. The massive holographic display showed Earth floating peacefully in space. But Tae-ho knew that peace was about to end. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," called out Lieutenant Park from the communications desk. "It's coming from outside our solar system. The signal is massive." Tae-ho nodded grimly. "Put it through." The room fell silent as the hologram flickered and changed. A towering figure appeared before them, standing nearly 10 feet tall with dark purple skin that seemed to shimmer like metal. 4 arms extended from its broad shoulders, each ending in clawed hands. Its face was angular and cruel, with glowing yellow eyes that seemed to look right through the humans watching. "I am Overlord Vextar, Supreme Commander of the Galaxy Council. Enforcement Division," the creature spoke in perfect English, though its voice carried an alien accent that made the words sound cold and threatening. "You will listen carefully, for I will say this only once." Dr. Park Hyo-jin entered the war room quietly, her face pale. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, and she had been studying intercepted signals from space for years. She moved to stand beside Tae-ho, her hands shaking slightly as she watched the alien commander. "Your species has been observed and evaluated," Vextar continued, his 4 arms moving as he spoke. "You have reached a level of development that requires guidance. The Galaxy Council has ruled over 847 species across this galaxy for over 3,000 of your years. We bring order to chaos. We bring peace through strength." Captain Lee Do-hyun slipped into the room and took his position at the tactical station. His jaw was set tight as he listened to the alien's words. Do-hyun had spent his entire life preparing for war, but he had always imagined fighting other humans, not creatures from the stars. "The tribute demanded from your world is as follows," Vextar said, and the hologram changed to show lists of numbers and images. 50% of your military vessels and weapons, 70% of your industrial output to be delivered to Council worlds each standard galactic year, 1 million of your people to serve the Council as workers in our expansion projects. The room erupted in shocked whispers. 1 million people. The number seemed impossible to comprehend. Tae-ho raised his hand for silence, and his officers fell quiet. "You have 30 standard galactic days to comply," Vextar continued. "This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is the law of the Galaxy Council, and it has never been refused." The hologram shifted again, showing images that made several officers gasp in horror. Destroyed worlds floated in space as dead rocks, cities reduced to glowing craters, massive ships carrying crowds of beings in chains. These worlds chose defiance, Vexatar explained with what might have been satisfaction in his voice. The Cathani refused tribute and were reduced to ash. The Morvek attempted to flee and were hunted across 3 star systems. The Zephyrians tried to negotiate and were enslaved entirely. Your fate will be no different if you choose unwisely. Dr. Park Hyo-jin stepped forward slightly. "How long have you been watching us?" she asked, her voice steady despite her fear. Vextar's yellow eyes fixed on her. "Your species has been under observation for 237 of your years. We waited for you to develop space travel, but not long enough to spread far from your home world. You have exactly 17 colonies outside this system. We know the location of each one. The threat was clear. Earth's colonies were hostages. You will respond to this transmission in exactly 30 days, Vextar said. Your answer will determine whether your species joins the Galaxy Council as tribute-paying subjects, or whether Earth becomes another dead world serving as a warning to others. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the war room in stunned silence. Then the sky outside began to glow. "Sir," Lieutenant Park called out. Something's appearing in our atmosphere. They all rushed to the windows. High above Earth, visible from every continent, a massive countdown timer had appeared in the sky. The numbers glowed an ominous red: 29 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes, 58 seconds. How is that possible? Do-hyun asked, staring up at the impossible sight. Advanced holographic projection, Dr. Park Hyo-jin answered quietly. They're beaming it directly into our atmosphere from somewhere outside our solar system. Every person on Earth can see it. Taeho's communication device buzzed frantically. The President, the United Nations, military commanders from every nation, everyone was calling at once. He could imagine the panic spreading across the world as people stared up at the countdown in the sky. Sir, Do-hyun said quietly, our entire fleet is maybe 200 ships. Most of them are exploration vessels with basic weapons. Against a force that's conquered 800 worlds. I know, Taeho replied. He turned to face his officers. Dr. Park, I need everything we know about the Galaxy Council. Every signal we've intercepted, every piece of data we've collected. How do they fight? What are their weaknesses? Park Hyo-jin nodded. I'll get my team working immediately. But Admiral, from what I've studied, they use overwhelming force. They don't negotiate because they don't need to. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered or been destroyed. There has to be something, Taeho insisted. No empire lasts 3,000 years without vulnerabilities. Captain Do-hyun cleared his throat. Sir, there might be something. Project Deep Shield has been running classified research for decades. Weapons development, defensive systems, things the public doesn't know about. What kind of things? Taeho asked. I don't have clearance to know the details, Do-hyun admitted. But I know engineer Choi Min-ho has been working on projects that could change how we think about space warfare. Dr. Park Hyo-jin looked up from her tablet where she had been taking notes. There's something else. In all the transmissions I've analyzed over the years, I've noticed patterns. The Galaxy Council species all seem to follow very specific behavioral rules. They're predictable in how they think and act. And humans? Taeho asked. Park Hyo-jin smiled grimly. Humans are anything but predictable. Outside, the countdown continued, its relentless march toward zero. News reports were already spreading panic across the globe. World leaders were calling emergency sessions. Some were already talking about surrender. But in the war room, Admiral Kim Tae-ho stared up at the alien countdown and felt something that the Galaxy Council had probably never encountered before in their 3,000 years of conquest. Defiance. Contact every military commander on Earth, he ordered. Call an emergency session with all world leaders, and get me a direct line to engineer Choi Min-ho. If humanity is going to respond to this ultimatum, we're going to make sure our answer is heard across the entire galaxy. The countdown in the sky continued ticking down. 29 days, 23 hours, 47 minutes, 12 seconds. But Admiral Kim Tae-ho was already planning humanity's reply. Dr. Park Hyo-jin walked through the underground archives beneath the United Nations building. Her footsteps echoed in the long hallway lined with metal doors. Each door led to rooms filled with humanity's most closely guarded secrets about life beyond Earth. She had been working here for 15 years, but tonight felt different. Tonight, those secrets might be humanity's only hope. She stopped at door number 7 and pressed her hand against the scanner. The heavy door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, dozens of computer screens glowed in the darkness, showing data that had been collected from space for over 2 centuries. Most humans had no idea this place even existed. Computer, display all files related to Galaxy Council observations, she said aloud. The screens flickered and changed. Images appeared showing alien ships that had been spotted near Earth's solar system dating back to the year 2188. Dr. Park sat down at the main console and began reading through reports that made her blood run cold. The Galaxy Council had been, watching humanity grow and develop for much longer than Overlord Vextar had admitted. They had detailed records of human wars, technology advances, and population growth. They knew about every major city, every military base, every space station. They had been planning this moment for decades. They waited, she whispered to herself. They waited until we were strong enough to be useful, but not strong enough to be dangerous. Meanwhile, 300 miles away in the mountains of Switzerland, engineer Choi Min-ho descended into tunnels that went deeper underground than most people could imagine. The elevator took 5 full minutes to reach the bottom level. When the doors opened, he stepped into a facility that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Massive machines hummed with power. Scientists in white coats worked at stations filled with technology that didn't appear in any textbook. In the center of the room stood a device that seemed to bend light around itself, making it hard to look at directly. "Status report," Min-ho called out as he approached the central station. Dr. Kim Soo-jin, the project's lead scientist, looked up from her computer. "The quantum displacement drive is ready for testing. The plasma cannon arrays are operational, and the stealth systems are working better than we hoped." Min-ho nodded grimly. "How many ships can we outfit in 30 days? With our current production rate, maybe 50 vessels. But Min-ho, even with our new technology, 50 ships against their entire fleet? I know the odds," Min-ho interrupted, "but we're not planning to fight them the way they expect." Back at Earth Defense Headquarters, Captain Lee Do-hyun stood, in front of a holographic map showing every military installation on Earth. Red dots marked locations that were already being evacuated. Blue dots showed where supplies were being moved. Yellow dots indicated secret facilities that most governments didn't know existed. "Sir," said Sergeant Han Subin as she entered the command center. Subin was a veteran of the resource wars that had ended 10 years ago. She was known for winning battles that should have been impossible to win. "The mountain bases are reporting ready status. Underground facilities in Australia, Canada, and Siberia are fully stocked and operational." Do-hyun turned to face her. "How many personnel can we hide in the deep bunkers?" 50,000 combat-ready troops, plus support staff. "But Captain, if we're planning for a ground war..." "We're planning for survival," Do-hyun said firmly. "The Galaxy Council has conquered 800 worlds. They must have strategies for every type of resistance they've encountered. Except they've never fought humans before." Subin smiled grimly. "Because humans don't fight fair." "Exactly," Do-hyun replied. "Every species they've defeated, probably. Tried to match their technology and tactics. We're not going to make that mistake." Dr. Park Hyo-jin finished reading the last classified file and leaned back in her chair. The picture was becoming clear, and it was both terrifying and encouraging. The Galaxy Council was incredibly powerful, but they were also predictable. They used the same strategies against every world they conquered. She picked up her secure phone and called Admiral Kim Tae-ho. "Admiral, I've found something important," she said when he answered. "The Galaxy Council has detailed behavioral patterns. They always give exactly 30 days for surrender. They always demand the same percentages of tribute. They always attack in the same formation." "That's useful information," Tae-ho replied. "But how does it help us?" "Because they do this because it always works," Park explained. "Every species they've encountered has either surrendered or fought them using conventional space warfare. They've never faced an enemy that refused to follow the rules." At that moment, engineer Choi Min-ho was examining a device that looked like a metal sphere covered in strange symbols. It had been recovered from a crashed alien probe 15 years ago. Human scientists had been studying it ever since, learning secrets that the Galaxy Council never intended to share. The probe's memory banks contained more than just surveillance data, Min-ho explained to his team. It had tactical information about other conquered worlds, battle plans, weaknesses of different species, even personal files on Galaxy Council commanders. Dr. Kim Soo-jin looked up from her analysis. Including Overlord Vextar? Especially Vextar, Minho smiled. He's been the Council's primary enforcer for over 500 years. He's never lost a campaign because he's never fought anyone who studied his methods. Captain Do-hyun received a call on his secure line. It was Admiral Tae-ho. Captain, I need you to visit the old CERN facility. Ask Engineer Choi Min-ho to show you Project Defiance. Then meet me at coordinates I'm sending. To your device, bring Sergeant Han Soo-bin. Do-hyun looked at the coordinates on his screen. They led to a location in the Pacific Ocean that shouldn't have anything there except water. An hour later, Do-hyun and Soo-bin stood on the deck of a submarine that had surfaced in the middle of the ocean. In front of them, a massive structure was rising from beneath the waves. It looked like a military base, but it was bigger than any base either of them had ever seen. "Welcome to Fortress Pacific," Admiral Tae-ho said as he joined them on deck. "One of 7 identical installations hidden around Earth. The Galaxy Council's surveillance missed them because they've been underwater for 50 years. Soo-bin stared at the emerging base. "How many people know about this?" "Before today? Maybe 100 humans total," Tae-ho replied. "We've been preparing for this moment since we first detected alien signals in space. Not because we wanted war, but because we knew it might be inevitable." The base was fully above water now, its weapons systems and communication arrays gleaming in the sunlight. Similar bases were rising from hidden locations around the globe. Dr. Park Hyo-jin arrived by helicopter as the base finished rising. She climbed out carrying a briefcase full of data about their alien enemies. "Admiral," she said as she approached, "I've learned something disturbing. The Galaxy Council doesn't just demand tribute from conquered worlds. They use psychological warfare to break the spirit of entire species. They make resistance seem impossible. And," Tae-ho asked, "every species that's tried to fight them has used the same basic strategy. They've built up their militaries, formed alliances, and then fought conventional space battles. They all lost because they tried to beat the Council at their own game." Engineer Choi Min-ho arrived on the next helicopter, carrying a device that hummed with strange energy. "The question is," Tae-ho said as his team assembled on the deck of the floating fortress, "what kind of response do we send to beings who have never heard the word no?" Above them, the countdown in the sky continued its relentless march. 26 days, 14 hours, 33 minutes, 18 seconds. But for the first time since the ultimatum had arrived, Admiral Kim Tae-ho felt something that might have been hope. The massive quantum communication array stretched across 3 miles of Australian desert. Its metal towers reached toward the stars like giant fingers, ready to send humanity's message across the galaxy. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood at the control platform, looking out at the thousands of people who had gathered to witness this moment. Every major news network on Earth was broadcasting live. World leaders sat in their emergency bunkers, watching their screens. In space stations and colonies throughout the solar system, humans stopped their work to listen. Even on alien worlds across the galaxy, beings who had spent centuries under the Galaxy Council's rule tuned their secret receivers to Earth's frequency. Dr. Park Hyo-jin stood beside the Admiral, her tablet showing the final analysis of everything they had learned about their enemies. Engineer Choi Min-ho checked his equipment one last time, making sure the transmission would reach every corner of the galaxy. Captain Lee Do-hyun and Sergeant Han Soo-bin flanked the platform, their hands resting on weapons that most humans had never seen before. The countdown in the sky showed exactly 24 hours remaining. Overlord Vextar had demanded an answer, and he was about to get one. "Admiral," said the communication officer, "we're receiving an incoming transmission from the Galaxy Council Enforcement Fleet." "Put it through," Tae-ho replied calmly. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Overlord Vextar standing on the bridge of his flagship. Behind him, the view screens showed thousands of alien warships arranged in perfect formation. Each ship was larger than Earth's biggest space station. "Humans," Vexitar spoke, his four arms gesturing as he talked. "Your time has expired. You will now provide your species' formal surrender and tribute agreement. This transmission is being monitored by the Galaxy Council High Command and broadcast to all member worlds as an example of proper submission." Tejo stepped forward, his Earth defense uniform crisp and clean despite everything they had been through. He looked directly into the camera, knowing that his words would be heard by billions of beings across the galaxy. "Overlord Vextar," he said in a clear, steady voice, "humanity has considered your demands carefully. Across the galaxy, enslaved beings working in alien mines paused their labor to listen. On worlds that had surrendered centuries ago, creatures who had forgotten what freedom felt like gathered around hidden communication devices. Even on the Galaxy Council's homeworlds, some beings stopped what they were doing to hear what the humans would say." Vextar's yellow eyes glowed with satisfaction. "Excellent. Transmit your surrender documents and tribute schedules. Your compliance will be noted favorably in the Council records." Dr. Park Hyo-jin had spent weeks studying recordings of other species' surrenders. They all followed the same pattern: long speeches about accepting the Council's wisdom, formal documents listing exactly what they would provide, and pledges of eternal loyalty. Some species begged for mercy. Others tried to negotiate for better terms. All of them had submitted. Admiral Tejo looked directly into Vexitar's alien eyes. The transmission was being recorded and broadcast live across hundreds of worlds. His next words would be heard by more beings than any human had ever addressed before. "No," he said. The word hung in the silence for a long moment. One simple syllable that carried more weight than any speech or declaration ever could. Vextar blinked his four eyes, clearly confused. "I do not understand. Repeat your transmission." "No," Tejo said again, his voice even calmer than before. On the mining world of Kepler-7, a slave who had not spoken his native language in 50 years whispered the word under his breath. On the ocean planet of Tidal 3, creatures who had been forced to work in underwater factories looked up at their guards with something that might have been hope. "This is impossible," Vextar snarled, his composure beginning to crack. "No species refuses the Galaxy Council. Your world lacks the military strength to resist us. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. You have no allies among the Council members. Explain your reasoning." Admiral Tejo turned to Dr. Park Hyo-jin, who stepped forward with her tablet. "Overlord Vextar," she said politely, "we have reviewed your demands and found them unreasonable. We decline your offer of subjugation." The alien commander's face twisted with rage. "This is not an offer! This is the law of the galaxy!" "Not our galaxy," Captain Lee Do-hyun said, speaking for the first time in the transmission. Across Earth, people in the streets began to cheer. The simple word "no" was being repeated in every language spoken by humans. Children who had been terrified by the countdown in the sky started chanting it like a game, but the word was spreading farther than Earth. On distant worlds, beings who had been slaves for generations began to remember what defiance felt like. The word was being translated into hundreds of alien languages, passed through secret networks that the Galaxy Council had never discovered. "You cannot simply refuse," Vextar shouted. "Every species in this galaxy obeys the Council. It has been this way for 3,000 years. "Then it's time for a change," Engineer Choi Min-ho said calmly. Vextar turned to speak with someone off-screen, his voice rising in anger. When he turned back to face the humans, his yellow eyes were glowing, brighter than before. "Very well," he said, his voice cold and threatening. "If you choose destruction over wisdom, you will join the Cathani, the Morvek, and the Zephyrians as examples of what happens to those who defy the Council." "We look forward to it," Admiral Tejo replied. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving The communication array in Australia broadcasting empty static to the stars. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Sergeant Han Su-bin started clapping. The sound spread through the crowd until thousands of people were applauding. Around the world, similar celebrations began in every major city. But Admiral Tae-ho knew the real work was just beginning. "Captain, Do-hyun," he said, "activate Protocol Defiance. All hidden installations are now operational. All reserve fleets are to take positions." "Yes, sir," Do-hyun replied, speaking into his communication device. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, bases that had been hidden for decades began to reveal themselves. Ships that had been disguised as mining vessels dropped their false hulls to show weapons that no alien had ever seen before. Dr. Park Hyo-jin was monitoring alien communication frequencies. "Admiral, we're picking up transmissions from dozens of worlds. The word is spreading faster than we expected." "What are they saying?" Tae-ho asked. "The same thing we just said," she replied with a smile. "No. Engineer Choi Min-ho activated a device that would change everything. Hidden transmitters on asteroids throughout the galaxy began broadcasting a simple message in every known alien language. The humans said, 'No, you can too.' On his flagship, Overlord Vextar stared at the space where Earth's transmission had been. In 3,000 years of galactic conquest, no species had ever simply refused the Council's demands. They had begged, they had tried to negotiate, they had attempted to flee, and they had fought losing battles. But none had ever just said, "No," and meant it. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Multiple worlds are broadcasting the same message the humans sent." "Impossible," Vextar muttered. "Sir, the slaves on Mining World 47B have stopped working. They're just standing there, repeating that word." Vextar's 4 hands clenched into fists. "Prepare the fleet for assault. We will make an example of Earth that will remind the galaxy why they fear us." But as his ships moved toward Earth, something was happening that he couldn't have predicted. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy was remembering what it felt like to say no. Captain Lee Do-hyun's ship moved silently through the asteroid belt beyond Mars. The vessel looked like an ordinary mining craft, but hidden beneath its hull were weapons and communication systems that represented humanity's most advanced technology. His mission was dangerous: make contact with alien resistance groups that most humans didn't even know existed. "Captain," whispered his communications officer, Ensign Kim Yu-na, "we're receiving a signal. It's coming from the Titan sector, but the transmission pattern doesn't match any Galaxy Council frequency." Do-hyun moved to the communication station. "Put it through, but keep our location hidden." The view screen flickered, showing a being that looked like it was made of living water. Its form constantly shifted and changed, but its eyes held intelligence and something that might have been hope. "Human vessel," the creature spoke through a translation device. "I am Tide Singer Yulhan of the Mercani people. We heard your word. We remember what it means to say no." Do-hyun leaned forward. "How long have your people been enslaved?" 300 years, Yulhan replied, his watery form rippling with emotion. "The Galaxy Council turned our ocean world into a factory. They forced us to build their ships underwater, away from the sight of other species. We had forgotten that resistance was possible until we heard your transmission." "What's happening on your world now?" Do-hyun asked. "The forbidden word spreads through our waters like a storm. For the first time in centuries, my people refuse to work. The council guards do not understand. They expected us to beg for mercy or make excuses. Instead, we simply say no and swim away." Back on Earth, Dr. Park Hyo-jin sat in her underground laboratory, surrounded by screens showing communication intercepts from across the galaxy. The pattern was becoming clear, and it was more beautiful than she had dared to hope. "Admiral," she called Tae-ho on the secure line, "you need to see this. The word isn't just spreading, It's causing a complete breakdown of the Galaxy Council's control systems. Tejo arrived 20 minutes later, studying the data with growing amazement. Look, at this, Park pointed to one screen. The crystal beings of Sector 12 have stopped producing energy crystals for Council ships. The mining colonies in the Outer Rim have gone completely silent. Even the machine worlds are malfunctioning because their enslaved programmers are refusing to fix them. How is this possible? Tejo asked. The Galaxy Council's entire system depends on psychological control, Park explained. They convinced every species that resistance was impossible. But we proved that it isn't. We broke their most powerful weapon, the belief that they couldn't be defied. Engineer Choi Min-ho emerged from the deeper levels of the underground facility. His face grim but determined. Admiral, our deep space monitoring stations are reporting massive movement from the Galaxy Council fleet. They're bringing everything they have toward our solar system. How many ships? Tejo asked. Over 10,000 vessels. Some of them are bigger than our space stations. They're not taking any chances with us. Meanwhile, in space near Jupiter, the first Galaxy Council scouts had arrived to observe Earth's defenses. What they found confused them greatly. Instead of the primitive fleet they expected, they discovered ships using technology that didn't appear in any of their databases. Captain Do-hyun's ship had returned to Earth space and was now part of a small fleet hiding behind Jupiter's moons. The human ships moved in patterns that the alien scouts couldn't predict, appearing and disappearing in ways that seemed to violate the laws of physics. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Park Min-seo from the tactical station. "The alien scouts are trying to scan our ships, but our stealth systems are confusing their sensors. They keep losing track of us." Do-hyun smiled. "That's because engineer Choi Min-ho designed our technology based on human thinking patterns, not alien logic. Their computers can't predict what we'll do next because we don't think like any species they've encountered before." On the Galaxy Council flagship, Overlord Vextar studied reports that made no sense to him. His scouts reported that Earth had only a few hundred ships, but those ships seemed to be everywhere at once. Human vessels appeared behind his scouts, performed impossible maneuvers, and vanished before his weapons could target them. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving disturbing news from across the galaxy. 17 worlds have stopped providing tribute. Mining operations on 43 planets have ceased. The slave workers are not rebelling violently. They're simply refusing to work." Vextar's forearms slammed onto his command console. "How can this be happening? The humans have no allies. They sent no messages to coordinate this." "Sir, it appears that the human transmission was broadcast on frequencies that reached every world in the galaxy. The word 'no' has been translated into hundreds of languages and is spreading through communication networks we didn't know existed." Back on Earth, Sergeant Han Subin was training a group of volunteers in guerrilla warfare tactics. These weren't professional soldiers. They were teachers, engineers, farmers, and students who had volunteered to defend their world. "Remember," she told them, "the Galaxy Council has conquered hundreds of worlds using the same tactics. They expect us to line up our ships and fight them in organized formations. They expect us to follow the rules of warfare that every other species has used." A young volunteer raised her hand. "So what do we do instead?" Subin smiled. "We cheat. We fight dirty. We do things that their computers can't predict because no civilized species has ever tried them before." Dr. Park Hyo-jin was monitoring alien communications when she discovered something remarkable. "Admiral, you need to hear this. I'm intercepting transmissions from Galaxy Council member species, not the leaders, but ordinary citizens." Tejo listened as Park played back-translated conversations. Beings who had been loyal Council citizens for generations were discussing the humans' refusal to surrender. Some sounded confused, others frightened, but many sounded curious. "They're asking questions they've never asked before," Park explained. Questions like, "Why should we pay tribute?" and "What if we said no too?" Engineer Choi Min-ho joined them with a device that looked like a metal ball covered in lights. I've finished analyzing the alien probe we captured years ago. Their technology is more advanced than ours, but it's also more limited. They've optimized everything for fighting species that think logically and predictably. And humans? Tae-ho asked. Human thinking is chaotic, creative, and completely unpredictable, Min-ho replied. Their battle computers keep trying to calculate what we'll do next, but we don't even know ourselves until we do it. Captain Do-hyun received a priority transmission from his ship. Admiral, we have a problem. The main Galaxy Council fleet is only 6 hours away from Earth. But we also have an opportunity. I'm in contact with resistance groups on 12 different worlds. They're asking for our help. Admiral Tae-ho looked at his team, the people who would determine humanity's fate in the coming battle. How many rebel groups are we talking about? Hundreds, Do-hyun replied. Maybe thousands. The word no has spread to species that have been slaves for so long that the Galaxy Council forgot they were even intelligent. Dr. Park Hyo-jin looked up from her communication station with tears in her eyes. Admiral, I'm receiving a message from a world in the far spiral arm. It's from children, alien children, who learned the word no and are teaching it to their parents. Engineer Choi Min-ho activated his device, and holographic displays showed the positions of Galaxy Council forces throughout the galaxy. But now, red dots marked worlds where rebellions had started. There were hundreds of them. The Galaxy Council thought they were coming to crush one rebellious world, Min-ho said quietly. But they're facing something they've never encountered before. A galaxy that's remembered how to resist. Overlord Vextar stood on his bridge, watching Earth grow larger on his view screen. Behind him, his fleet of 10,000 ships prepared for what should have been an easy battle. But reports kept coming in from across the galaxy. Worlds in rebellion, supply lines disrupted, and something the Council had never faced before. A galaxy that had learned to say no. The largest fleet in galactic history surrounded Earth like a swarm of metal locusts. 10,000 Galaxy Council warships hung in space, their weapons pointed at the small blue world that had dared to say no. Overlord Vextar stood on his command bridge, confident that this battle would end quickly and serve as a warning to every other world in the galaxy. Begin the assault, he commanded. The Council fleet moved forward in perfect formation, just as they had done for 3,000 years of conquest. Their computers calculated the best attack patterns, their weapons systems targeted Earth's major cities, and their commanders prepared for another easy victory. But Admiral Kim Tae-ho was ready for them. All ships, execute Plan Chaos, he broadcast from his command ship hidden behind Earth's moon. What happened next had never been seen before in galactic warfare. Human ships appeared from everywhere at once, from behind asteroids, from inside gas clouds, even from beneath the surface of Mars where they had been buried and waiting. They moved in patterns that made no sense to the alien computers trying to track them. Captain Lee Do-hyun led the first wave of attacks. His ship twisted and spun through space like a leaf in the wind, firing weapons that the Galaxy Council had never encountered before. When alien ships tried to return fire, Do-hyun's vessel was already somewhere else, attacking from a completely different direction. Sir, reported his tactical officer, the alien ships are having trouble targeting us. Their computers keep predicting where we'll go next, but we keep changing course randomly. That's the plan, Do-hyun replied with a grin. Engineer Choi Min-ho programmed our navigation systems to be deliberately unpredictable. Even we don't know where we're going until we get there. On Overlord Vextar's flagship, chaos was spreading through the command center. Sir, we've lost contact with 300 ships in the first wave, his communications officer reported. The humans are using weapons we've never seen before, and their attack patterns don't follow any logical system. Vextar stared at the battle display in disbelief. Human ships were darting between his massive warships like insects, striking weak points that his engineers had thought were impossible to reach. When his forces tried to surround the human vessels, they simply disappeared and reappeared somewhere else. "How are they moving like that?" he demanded. "We don't know, sir. Their technology seems to bend space in ways our science says is impossible." But the real surprise wasn't happening in space around Earth. Deep beneath the planet's surface, Sergeant Han Subin was leading the most unusual military operation in human history. Using transport technology that engineer Choi Min-ho had developed, in secret, human soldiers were appearing directly inside Galaxy Council ships. "Remember," Subin told her team, as they materialized in the engine room of an alien battleship, "we're not here to destroy these ships. We're here to liberate them." The Galaxy Council crews found themselves facing human soldiers who fought unlike any enemy they had encountered. Instead of trying to kill the alien crew members, the humans were freeing the enslaved workers who kept the ships running. Many of these workers were species that had been conquered centuries ago and forced to serve on council vessels. "You don't have to fight for them anymore," Subin told a group of crystalline beings who had been maintaining the ship's power systems. "You can say no." The crystalline workers looked at each other, then at their council overseers. For the first time in 300 years, they stopped working. Similar scenes were playing out across the Galaxy Council fleet. Human boarding parties weren't trying to capture ships. They were starting revolutions on them. Enslaved crews who had operated the weapons and engines for their conquerors suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. On his flagship, Overlord Vextar watched his perfect fleet begin to fall apart from within. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the battle fleet," his aide reported nervously. "Ship after ship is going dark. Not destroyed. Their crews are simply refusing to fight." "Impossible," Vexatar roared. "Execute Order 66. All ships are to fire on any vessel that refuses to follow commands." But even that didn't work. When Council ships tried to fire on their rebellious companions, they found that their weapons operators, enslaved beings from conquered worlds, were refusing to pull the triggers. Dr. Park Hyojin monitored the battle from her command center on Earth, watching as her years of studying alien psychology paid off in ways she had never imagined. "Admiral," she called Tae-ho on the communication system, "it's working exactly as we hoped. The Galaxy Council's biggest weakness isn't their technology. It's that their entire system depends on forced cooperation. When that cooperation stops, everything falls apart." Admiral Tae-ho watched the battle displays with amazement. The human fleet of 200 ships was somehow holding its own against 10,000 council vessels, not through superior firepower, but by turning the enemy fleet against itself. "Status report," he requested. Engineer Choi Min-ho's voice came through the speakers. 40% of the council fleet has stopped fighting. Another 30% is dealing with internal rebellions. The remainder are too confused to coordinate their attacks effectively. But the most important battle wasn't happening in Earth's solar system. Across the galaxy, the word "no" had sparked the largest revolution in galactic history. On the water world where Tide singer Yul Han lived, Galaxy Council ships sent to restore order found themselves facing oceans full of rebellious Mercani who simply refused to be enslaved anymore. When the Council ships tried to attack, their own enslaved crews sabotaged the weapon systems. On mining worlds throughout the galaxy, workers who had been digging metals for Council ships for centuries walked away from their jobs. When Council enforcers arrived to force them back to work, they found empty mines and a simple message written on the walls in every language: "No." The machine worlds that built Council technology suddenly stopped producing new ships and weapons. The enslaved programmers who ran the automated factories had learned a new command that overwrote all their previous programming: refuse. Overlord. Vextar realized his empire was crumbling faster than he could stop it. "Send a message to all Council worlds," he ordered desperately. "Full military mobilization. Every available ship is to converge on Earth immediately." but his communications officer looked up with fear in his alien eyes. "Sir, I can't reach most of our worlds. The communication networks are being jammed by signals broadcasting that human word in every known language." Captain Do-hyun's ship appeared directly above Vextar's flagship, having somehow passed through the shields without triggering any alarms. The human captain opened a communication channel. "Overlord Vextar," Do-hyun said calmly, "your fleet is defeated, your empire is in rebellion, and your 3,000 years of galactic tyranny are over. Do you want to surrender, or do you want to keep fighting a war you can't win?" Vextar's 4 hands clenched into fists. "The Galaxy Council does not surrender to primitive species." "Then you'll lose to a primitive species," Do-hyun replied. "Your choice." Dr. Park Hyo-jin was receiving reports from across the galaxy that made her smile with tears in her eyes. "Admiral, I'm getting confirmations from over 400 worlds. The rebellions are successful. The Galaxy Council's control structure has completely collapsed." Sergeant Han Subin's voice came over the communication system from inside a Council battleship. "Admiral, the crew of this vessel wants to join our side. They're asking if they can help free other ships." Engineer Choi Min-ho reported from his technical station. "The quantum cascade effect is working perfectly. Every ship that joins our side makes it easier for other ships to break free from Council control." Admiral Tae-ho looked out at the battle still raging in space around Earth. But it was no longer a battle between humans and aliens. It had become something much bigger, a galaxy-wide revolution where enslaved species were fighting alongside. Humans for freedom. "Open a channel to all ships in the area," he commanded. When the channel was open, Tae-ho spoke words that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. "This is Admiral Kim Tae-ho of Earth. To all beings who choose freedom over slavery, you are welcome to stand with us. To those who prefer tyranny, you are welcome to leave. The age of the Galaxy Council is over. The age of galactic cooperation has begun." 5 years later, Admiral Kim Tae-ho sat in the assembly hall of the new Galaxy Alliance, representing Earth, in a government based on cooperation instead of conquest. The old tribute system was gone. The enslaved worlds were free. And somewhere in the galaxy, children who had never known freedom were learning their first and most important word in their native languages, the word that changed everything. No,